Hey everyone, I want to welcome you to our online seminar this afternoon on Brotherhood to Fatherhood. Thank you all for those that have joined. So quickly after the start time, we're going to have some more people rolling in as we get going. So we're going to start with some introductions and let the panelists tell you a little bit about themselves, and then we will get into our discussion for the afternoon. Before we get started, I did want to say this is kind of a new topic for us. Typically, I think you see at Pike University events or any of the educational things we do. We focus a lot on career development. People go to college to get their jobs, and Pike's a good accelerator for that journey. But it's exciting to talk about something maybe outside of that realm when it comes to fatherhood. We talk about building men that are going to go on and shape the world, and a lot of that happens in your homes. And so it's exciting to see such a widespread attraction to this kind of event, and hopefully we can do some more topics similar to it. If you have ideas, I'd be happy for you to reach out to me on LinkedIn or email or the Pike Network and share some topics you'd like to hear after this one. And a final shameless plug before we hop into our introductions here. If you haven't joined the Pike Network, it's a platform we have, pikenetwork.org, easy to find. That's made for member connectivity, so you can go through a directory, find all types of people, where they're from, what jobs they have, and make connections outside of maybe LinkedIn, where you're trying to figure out who is and who is not a Pike. So check out the Pike Network. We post the events and links as soon as we have them scheduled in there, so you can have first access to future events like that. So to get us started, I'm going to kick it over to the panelists to give you a little introduction on themselves. We'll start with Mike Riley.
Good afternoon, gentlemen, or morning, wherever you might be. I'm Mike Riley, a 1984 initiate of the Alpha Mega chapter at Kansas State University. My involvement with the fraternity began obviously as an undergraduate. Was fortunate to serve as SMC, then as a chapter consultant on the professional staff. Later, a House Corporation president, which I'll refer to a little later, and then service on the Supreme Council, and served as the international president 21 to 22. Personally, I am married, two daughters. All three are Chi Omegas. And professionally, I have a private practice law firm in my hometown of Hiawatha, Kansas.
Let's go, Brandon Fry.
Good afternoon, good morning, gentlemen. Hope everyone's doing well. I'm Brandon Fry. I serve as I'm a 97 initiate of the Out of Sight chapter at Appalachian State University in Boone, North Carolina. As far as my volunteer role for the fraternity, I am president of the PIKE University Board of Directors. And then my day job is I'm the vice chancellor for student affairs at East Carolina University. Jenny, my wife, and I will be married 25 years this October, and we've got three great children. Solomon, who's 17, Lawson, who's 14, and Sebastian, he is 9.
Let's go, Matt.
Thanks, Bailey, and thanks for putting this together. I think this is probably one of the most important topics that we could probably speak about, so appreciate that. Yeah, I live in Orange County, California. I was an initiate of Chapman University in 2003. A little bit of a late start. I pledged my my second semester sophomore year. And since then, just really have dug in and tried to give back as much as I could to the fraternity. So I volunteered right away after graduation, and at the same time joined staff in Memphis, Tennessee, and traveled as a consultant, and then rolled into a volunteer role as a chapter advisor and then a regional president here in the Golden West. And then now find myself in my third term as vice president on the Supreme Council, which has been really rewarding for me. Personally, I live with my wife, Deja, my 6-year-old son, Elijah, and my 4-year-old son, Noah, in Newport Beach, California. And I'm an entrepreneur out here with a couple of different businesses. Today, I'm working at my payments company in Costa Mesa, California.
Awesome. And EJ.
Thanks, Bailey. Looking forward to the discussion today. So I'm a 2005 initiate Epsilon Iota chapter at Southeast Missouri State. After graduation, I also worked for the fraternity staff, Had a great time doing that, paying it forward, giving back to the fraternity that gave me so much, which I'm glad that we can still do that today. After that, after working on staff, is from a volunteer perspective. I've been a International Recruitment Commission chairman. I serve as a director on Pike University under Dr. Fry's leadership, and continue just to mentor members of my own undergraduate chapter where I serve as a recruitment advisor. So originally from St. Louis, but currently reside in Charleston, South Carolina with my wife and my family. My wife, she's what brought us down here. She works in corporate finance for Boeing, and they have a big presence down here. And then we have two children, one on the way. I have a 7-year-old son named Edwin, almost 5-year-old Anne Marie, and then a soon-to-be daughter, Martha James. So professionally, I work for a company called Avalara. We do tax software, and I work in our international partnerships where I manage our SAP partnership.
Awesome. Appreciate it, guys. And for those who may have joined in the last couple minutes, we're going to be going through some questions for the panelists. And so in the chat, if you want to toss in, who you are, maybe what your family looks like. And if you have any questions for them, feel free to toss those in there and I can get to them as we're going through here. So I'm going to start with our first question to Mike. What's one tradition that you've created that your kids love?
My two daughters, Ashton and Reagan, are now in their late 20s. But when my youngest one was 3 years old, we started a tradition of a father-daughter weekend. And we would go to one of the area cities, Kansas City, Omaha, Topeka, for a long weekend, just the two of us. And it would be set up where they would choose the restaurants where we're going to eat. If there's movies or a play or some activity, they would choose that. I'd choose a couple of dad activities. Usually it was a museum of some sort to try to inculcate them in some sort of culture. But they loved it. And it's something that we still do at some level to this day. Even as they got older, our calendars got a little busier, and we would combine it, and I would take both of them at the same time. But it was a great opportunity for me to spend some one-on-one time with my child outside the house, outside the normal day-to-day life. My wife loved it, gave her a break, a nice weekend alone. And then, like I indicated before, it gave me an opportunity to expose them to, perhaps a play or museums or something. And, at the end of the day, if that one-on-one time with them was priceless to me, and it's something we still continue to do on some level.
That's awesome. I want to give a shout out to Drew in the chat for from coming to us from LSU. Got a daughter coming in July. Congratulations. We're going to kick it over to our second question here. I'm going to direct this one at Matt. How did your own father or another male role model influence how the kind of dad that you became?
Yeah, thanks for that, Bailey. I think I grew up in a bit of an unconventional household when it comes to male figureheads and role models. My father had me in his 40s, and at the time already had 3 grown children with my mom. So I lived in a household with my father and 3 older brothers that were 16, 18, and 20 years my senior, and sort of acted like uncles, right? So I don't know how many folks on this call have grown up in a house where you've got, 3 uncles and a dad all in the same house, but I did sort of. And honestly, these guys were on pedestals for me for years and years and years. Obviously, it was all that I knew, so to speak. And I kind of set off to really emulate everything that these guys did. And then there came a time that you kind of grow into yourself and you start realizing that these guys are just doing the best that they can, and they're just human, and they're just guys that have found themselves in the position that they are. And so what I really try to do was take the best parts of them and apply it to my life, and then take the parts that I thought were a bit more prickly and just really be thoughtful and intentional about being different. And I think that that part is just as powerful as emulating the positive parts, is being intentional about the stuff that you don't want to be. And it's okay to hold both of those at the same time. It's not a knock on them personally. It's not that you don't love them. It's that they are living their life and having their human experience, and I'm having mine. And it's okay to be individualistic and also borrow some things. And so, listen, I grew up in a really loving household, and so I was able to have those opportunities, to have the latitude to pick and choose. A lot of folks don't have that, and they have to find mentorship in other areas, which, I'm excited to hear what some of the other panel members talked about. But yeah, I think the evolution of that is really important. And I think it's important for us to be open-minded and here for it, because a lot of times we get so caught up in living someone else's life when really we should be focusing on ours. Thanks, Bailey.
Absolutely. Brandon, do you want to share maybe a different perspective on that question?
Yeah, Matt, thanks for sharing your perspective, bud. I know I've heard some of that as we've gotten to be good friends over the years. So I always appreciate my brothers and fellow panel members saying their stories. In the spirit of like that brotherhood honesty, I'll give a little bit of a different perspective on fatherhood. My biological father, he killed himself when I was 8, and my brother had just turned 5, and then our stepfather, he was a flawed and dangerous man, both mentally and physically. So that really shaped my conception of fatherhood. So it was warped a bit. It was abandonment, it was pain, it was fear as parts of fatherhood in me. And ironically, I had to become a father figure to my younger brother to take some of the heat off my mom or my brother. I got in the way of my angry stepdad a lot. And so I've always was cautious as a young man over older men. Early on, I couldn't imagine not being a dad now, but early on, I was afraid to be a dad because I didn't want any of the bad stuff that maybe I had experienced to rub off on me, and then that would influence my children. I really didn't hear Coach Jeff Taylor, who was my cross country coach in high school, was the first guy that I ever adult male that I ever heard tell me that he was proud of me and that he cared for me. So he's still a great mentor to this day. But that helped shaping it. And then when I got into the fraternity, we had Father's Weekends, and I didn't have my stepdad participate, but I would get to know and meet other dads that were my chapter brothers' dads, and I loved hanging out, and they would kind of adopt me for the weekend as their son. And then when I met my father-in-law, Paul, he was a great dad, and so he passed away early in Jenny and I's marriage, but for those years that I got to know him, it was phenomenal. As I've gotten older, other dads at church, my faith's important to me, so other dads at church and mentors have been good. But really, for those of y'all that may have been like me and had a kind of this different experience with fatherhood or been afraid of it, I say keep an open mind and learn. I mean, my natural learning style is analytic, so I read a lot of books. I talk to people. I talk to dads that I respected. I really listened and learned, and then I grounded. I think my core concept is love my children, and look towards my faith. But most importantly, I won't leave this part out. I've been blessed to have a really good partner, my wife Jenny. We're in it together, and so she supports me and I support her, and we want our children to see that. They'll try to play mom versus dad sometimes, so you have to be careful, especially if those that are on the call or have had sisters or have a daughter. She definitely gets her way a lot with me. So that's my different take, and I appreciate y'all letting me tell that story.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Brandon. To a similar question, except focusing more on the fraternity. EJ, I'm going to kick this one over to you. How has your PIKE experience, or maybe just PIKE's values, shaped the father that you've become?
Yeah, I guess going off a little bit what Brandon said, I had a chapter. I have plenty of experience with my own father, which was a great experience. But specifically to my PIKE experience, I had a chapter advisor who was very fatherly to us. He was in his 60s when I was in the chapter, but was kind of maybe more grandfatherly. But he never missed an opportunity to tell somebody how proud of him he was. You put on a community service event, just would lavish you with praise. He was very honest with you, but he also was very intentional with like telling you how proud of you he was, giving you good feedback. So that's something that I've really like have been intentional myself, because as fathers, sometimes we can expect more. My son had a baseball camp today, and instead of thinking of, hey buddy, you didn't like hustle enough here or hustle enough there, I can say, hey, I saw how good of a teammate you were being here. Like, I'm so proud of how hard you work here. So I think that type of stuff, it's easy to pick the faults of people, but being able to tell people and share some sincere appreciation, that's having that experience as an undergraduate and seeing that from a fatherly figure was great for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Mike, do you have a perspective you want to share on this question as well?
I do, really, from two fronts. The first was, when I was initiated and I took the oath into Pi Kappa Alpha, that was the first lifetime commitment I'd ever made in my life. Up until then, I joined things, but I'd never committed something for a lifetime. So, seeing how that became part of my life for the years before I became a father, I think prepared me for that role as a father, and knowing that this is for a lifetime. And then as a little second approach to that that I referenced earlier, when I was a house corporation president for Alpha Omega, we had a fire and a renovation. And I live about 90 minutes from Manhattan, Kansas. And so I was regularly going down to check on the chapter house, the progress and renovation, and working with the undergraduates. And I'd have my daughters join me. And from that point on, I would involve them in anything related to the fraternity that they wanted to be a part of. And that led to them, coming to conventions and getting to know the men that I love and admire so much. And so they are exposed to other great fathers as well. And that's one thing I really appreciate the fraternity for.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing, Mike. Brandon, I'm going to kick this next question over to you. What's a mistake that you've made as a dad that maybe taught you the most, and what did it teach you?
Well, I think any dad will know you're going to make some mistakes. The one that was probably the most triggering, that woke me up was, I think Solomon, our firstborn, was maybe 5, and he was having like a pre-K or a graduation at our church where he went to preschool at. And I had a meeting that I needed to go to. I was a workaholic, like I said, and I was low income growing up. And so one of my drivers is I've got to provide for my family. Talk about a man, you want to provide for your family. But I think I took it too far because I remember thinking I had to be at this important meeting, which ironically ended up turning out to be like a 10-minute recap that could have been done in an email. But I missed his little graduation with his little mortarboard and white little graduation coat. And my wife said the first thing out of his mouth is, "Where's dad at?" And so that hit me hard. And I was like, my mindset changed. I knew that I messed up there. And I'm proud of the work that I do. I care about my job. It's a piece of my identity. But at that moment, I said, I'm not going to let work control me when it comes to what is truly makes me happy. And that's with my wife and my children. And so I've decided to work to help me live, not to, live to work. And what I think like, again, I love my job, but if I died of a stroke or something today, I would have a replacement in 2 days at max. And they would probably be some students that remember me, but my children would be, that's the legacy I want to think about. So the mistake is I was confused about thinking the priority was I had to work so hard and I would miss their stuff, but on the back end, they'd appreciate it if they didn't have student loans or something. But I'm like, I want to live now and be with them. So for me, that was a huge wake up call in dad. And I think the other 2 children, Lawson and Sebastian, had benefited that because I didn't miss their little pre-K. I think there's a graduation for everything now, gentlemen. So get prepared for that. Like when I grew up, it's like you had graduation from high school. That was a milestone. Now there's pre-K, elementary, middle school, high school, you name it. There's a graduation for it. But I'll be damned if there is one. I'm going to be at all those things. So because you only, that is what it is. But that's my that was my mistake and kind of wake up call as a dad.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a top part of this conversation that probably resonates a lot with people, that tightrope walk of fatherhood and your career demands. And so on a similar vein, I'm going to kick it over to EJ here. What's a tough trade-off that you've had to make between your work career demands and being present for your kids?
Well, this is a great segue because Brandon was the one that gave me the lesson that he learned right there that he shared with everybody. He told me when I told him we were expecting our first child. So I came in ready with that mindset. Because he also told me, the only thing a child wants is your time. It's not, did you help me pay off student loans or buy me a car when I'm 16? That stuff's nice, but they care about the time that you spend with them. So I've been fortunate to have, Brandon learned that lesson and then he taught it to me and then I didn't have to learn it the hard way. And so that's really what I've come into my fatherhood with that mindset, right? And the trade-offs are constant. They're daily. Like it doesn't matter, you can think of it from a career standpoint, or you can think of it when I don't know, we were making sandwiches to go to the beach yesterday. After I made all the sandwiches, there's 2 pieces left for my sandwich. What did I get? I got the heels of the bread. Okay, those are the sacrifices and the trade-offs you do as a dad. If peanut dad was a sandwich, it'd be a PB&J with the heels. But when it comes to like from the professional standpoint, I think the role of fatherhood has really changed in the last couple decades, right? It's not like the Don Draper, era of the 50s and 60s where you're the provider and then you come home and you discipline the children and that's your relationship with your children. Like that's not the world we live in. And you know what? It's better. We get to, I think I saw a statistic somewhere where like in 1980, 5% of fathers said they had changed a diaper. Now that has like completely inverted. And that's not to say that, men are becoming less masculine or fatherhood is changing for the worse. It's changing for the better. We're spending more time with our children than any generation before us. But they kind of held it behind, because we kind of have that grind culture now. But, I'm more into the culture of like, hey, I can pick up my kids from school. I can coach their teams. And so if I have to, leave, if I have to have a 5 a.m. flight, or if I have to have a midnight flight to do a red eye to get home, like I'm going to do that stuff. If I have to wake up at 4:30 in the morning so I can get my exercise in because I'm going to be up at 6 and making sure my kid, make my kids breakfast, like those are things I'm going to do. So those constant trade-offs, but you'll never, this is something else I heard from somebody, you'll never regret time with your kids. Um, you know, and I leave this chair, they're going to have somebody to backfill my position. If you're, if you have a toxic boss or things like that, you don't have to, I know the economy is kind of always in ebbs and flows. And I know some people are more fortunate than others that have that flexibility, but then that's kind of the motivation to work for that flexibility so you can have that time with your kids because you'll never regret it.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Mike, another question for you over here. How did you think becoming a dad was going to change you as a man? And then how did it actually play out?
Well, I thought I was going to be the best dad in the world. I grew up on 70s, early 80s sitcom where it was the perfect father. It was Ward Cleaver or Cliff Huxtable. And then you become a father at there's phases, especially with teenage daughters, that everything you say is completely wrong. So, it was much tougher than I ever dreamt. Matthew Greco made a comment when we were planning this that being a father is easy. Being a good father is one of the toughest things in the world. And I'm not claiming to be a good father. I love being a father. But just as anybody on here can attest to, I've made plenty of mistakes. So the job was so much different than I ever imagined it. I mean, there was times where I would second guess myself and I said, I'm going to say something or give them advice I don't believe in, and that would be wrong too, and they'd be mad at me over that. But at the end of the day, I've always enjoyed challenges, and being a father is one of those greatest challenges, and without a doubt has the greatest rewards.
Awesome. All right, everyone, we're about 30 minutes in here. So if you have questions that you want answered here in a little bit as we start to come to a close to kind of our prepared questions, feel free to toss those in the chat. We can get those answered. I'm going to kick it over to Matt now. Someone had mentioned earlier, it may have been you, about the partner that you're working with through, journey as a parent. Fatherhood isn't a solo mission. How has finding the right partner and or leaning on maybe a community helped you show up stronger as a father?
Yeah, thanks, Bailey. Yeah, this was a question that I wanted added when we were doing the prep, just because I think it's a blind spot for a lot of us. And Brandon reiterated it on this portion of our discussion today. Listen, guys on this call that are dads or aspiring dads, everyone focuses on the resume for life, and they put so much time into, what career they're going to have and where they want to live and, what gym they're going to join and what membership and whatever that, else is. Really the biggest decision and the most important decision is your partner. It really is. You spend more time with them. If you're going to have kids, you are responsible for these lives. And you got to really make sure you have the right partner. I waited in life to make a decision to get married. I was almost 40 years old when I decided to have kids. And so with that, there came a whole another host of issues and challenges with having kids. But at the time, I thought I was pretty prepared to be a dad, even though I was wildly underprepared. But what I was even more underprepared for was being a husband to a new mom. And I think that that's the part that people don't tell us about, is how we can support our partner and our spouse when they're pregnant, when they're having labor, when they're having child rearing in the first couple of months. And so having that grace and empathy and patience and love, unconditional love for your partner is really important. And then having the other pieces too, to make sure that you guys can continue on and having the family and achieve the goals that you want as a unit. It's so incredible, paramount. So all that to say, make sure you guys are really thoughtful about your partnerships. When I was young in college, I had this checklist of things that I thought I wanted in a spouse. And pretty quickly, I realized that was just this superficial thing that the social constructs of our life prepared for me subconsciously. And what I really ended up finding was this completely different checklist. The first one was superficial. It had to do with the resume building. And then the other one was like, hey, loyal, self-deprecating, empathetic, sense of humor, attractive, all those things that didn't look like college degree, Roman Catholic, local family. So anyways, I can go on and on, but my wife, Deja, is perfect for me. When I was trying to break up with her before we were engaged, she said, I may not be what you want, but I'm what you need. And that's the woman that I found out that I did need. She's a great counterbalance to me. I say she's my cosmic sandpaper. She smooths out my rough edges. So I'll kick it back to you, Bailey.
Awesome. With our last prepared question here, and then we'll get into some of the questions from the chat. Kind of to the title of our session here today, Brotherhood and Fatherhood, and making that connection. I'm going to start kick it over to Brandon with this one. Fatherhood and brotherhood both demand accountability, and we've talked a little bit about maybe the career lessons you've taken into fatherhood, or what you've learned that you've taken into being a father. And I want to kind of flip the script on that question a little bit here with what's a lesson you've learned from raising your kids that you've taken into leading in your career, or a lot of you or all of you are leaders in the fraternity from a volunteer standpoint. So leading in your career or leading the fraternity, what's a lesson you've learned from your kids and raising them that you've taken into the professional space?
Thanks, Bailey. I think for me, one of the areas that I've been able to apply fatherhood in the professional setting has been as a supervisor. So I like that topic. I've researched it when I was working on my doctorate. And the same way as each one of my children are unique, dynamic, have their own strengths and opportunities to grow in. I've kind of, and I meet them where they're at, and I kind of they're motivated by different things. They're engaged, in different things academically and creatively. So I try to take that approach with my reports too, and meet them where they're at, to respect their uniqueness, and then try to develop them and be supportive. Doesn't mean that I don't have to enact discipline or have tough conversations the same way as I have to do that with my own children. But I really do think that, to give an example, where I met an employee where they were at, I had two associate deans at one of the places I was working at. And I learned through my children, like, oh, Solomon is this way in his approach, or what motivates him. And I learned, well, Lawson's this way. I said, well, I'm going to apply that in my work environment. So whereas one of my staff, she was really motivated by like personalized outreach. So if I praised her in public, it would embarrass her. But if I wrote her a note, and you'd go in her office and she would have that note tacked up on like her billboard in the wall. And then at the same time, I had another associate dean where she was newer in her director role. She did that, not that she didn't appreciate the personalized card, but it might go in the trash. But if I praised her in public, then she lit up. That motivated her. And similarly, I've had noticed that one of my children was more introverted, and how I navigated that individually and praised different things there was different than how I praised the other one. And so that was a concept that I've really tried to apply through fatherhood into my professional or other volunteer roles I've had.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Brandon. EJ, do you want to hop in on this question as well?
Sure. One thing that really stands out to me, and it kind of my own like personal like challenges or shortcomings or opportunities, is when I met with disappointment, like when something doesn't like reach like my expectation, like I easily can like have an attitude about it. And so that's not a great trait when you're raising young children. And so um it's and there's nothing more personal than when your child is making, and this isn't just like making a mistake, like not using a coaster or something, but like some like real like needing like character building type stuff, and you're seeing them do something and like trying to like be dispassionate, kind of remove your emotions from it and be able to have like um a conversation without the emotions into it and without being um I guess so emotional is probably the best way to put it. So a lot of examples like that just with my children, but being able to do that because I want to model the right behavior as a father. So if they make a mistake and I get angry, and I make this mistake all the time and I'm always working on it, but my wife, again, to Greco's point about having the right partner, my wife is a great partner and always make sure to remind me in the best possible way that we have to model for our children. And so I've taken that into my work life as well, where I never had to use that muscle in the work life. If I was disappointed, if I was kind of upset, like I'm dealing with adults, like they can handle the emotions, but we're all kids, emotionally at some point. So I have to be mindful of my emotions and how that's affecting others, even in a professional setting. So having to work that muscle daily as a father helps me tremendously in my professional life.
Awesome. We're going to kick it over to the chat now with some of the questions we've gotten in. And if you have some as we're getting started here over the next 10, 15 minutes, feel free to toss one in there and we can hopefully get to it before we run out of time. But question from Caden in West Virginia. How do you balance sharing your life with your children and keeping things separate, whether for your own benefit or for theirs? And that's to anyone who wants to answer.
I'll jump in and hopefully I'm addressing Caden's question directly, but my wife and I participated in a parenting program one time, and it was an interesting point of view that we were a family before the kids came along. And this goes back to everyone's comment about how important that spouse is and nurturing that relationship. And especially a newborn can play havoc on even the best relationship. And so my wife and I worked hard to still have time together, whether that's a date night or a short trip. But we were very fortunate. We had grandparents in the area that could help out with that. But I know that can be a challenge, but we still made together time a priority despite the fact that we had kids. And I think that made us a better couple and better parents.
Awesome. Does anyone else want to add something to that?
Yeah, I can just kind of dovetail on that a little bit. And this is a little bit of a extension from the question you had for me earlier when you asked about spouse and then also community. To Mike's point, it's really important to find the community that you can lean on when you're raising kids, because to Mike's point, you do require some time away from the children and time to connect with your spouse. In fact, a lot of my peers, they force this, and not in a bad way. They literally schedule it, they calendar it, and they make time for each other. And if you don't have family in the area like we don't, we wildly underestimated finding help, like a babysitter or a nanny or whoever it is that you would lean on to assist in caring for your kids while you're gone. That comes into the calculus at some point. And so the more resources you have, the better. All that to say, all I want to do is hang out with my kids, literally. And so it's funny because I know I need to take time and be with my wife one-on-one and create those connections and work that muscle to what EJ was saying earlier, is that like intellectual muscle with your wife. And I don't do a very good job of it because all I want to do is like be with my two boys and like rolling around and playing Legos and stuff. So anyways, I'm kind of ranting on here, but yeah, it's very important to find both of those.
So, another question from the crowd, Tariq asked, he wanted to know if any of you were scared to become dads, and if you were, what were you most scared of, and how, if at all, did the scared, nervous feelings go away?
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely scared. And probably for some same reasons. Like when so my dad passed away, and then like 6 months later we were pregnant. And so like I'm dealing with all those emotions of like losing a father, now becoming a father, and like to Matt's point too, as far as like that community and like so many people like as they're becoming a father can talk to their dad. I didn't have that, right? And so that part of that was scary. But yeah, obviously you find a community and whatnot, but those feelings go away like the minute your child is like resting on your wife's chest, and then like your son's reaching out for you, and you're just like, oh, this was great. And then what I always tell soon to be potential dads, so I didn't get married as late as Matt. I think I was 33 when my son was born, and out of my friend group I was kind of one of the last ones. And I always tell people, I go, if I knew I was gonna love this so much, like not just like love my child, but like love being a dad, I would have done this years earlier. Like I would have done this so much earlier if I could or had the opportunity. I kind of thought maybe, oh, let's wait for it. I'm going to lose myself, or I'm not going to be able to do all the fun things I like to do. But once you become a dad, I just thought, oh, I would have done this years ago. This is so fun.
Awesome.
I had a little different experience than EJ, and I think I alluded to the sitcom dads. I was arrogant. I wasn't scared to have that baby, and even in the hospital, this is great, and I'm going to be the perfect father. And then when we packed up and left the hospital, they're letting us leave with this child, and I didn't have to take a test or anything. I was terrified. We had about an hour drive home from the hospital. I about had a breakdown. I can't do this. And my mother-in-law stayed with us for about a week. And then I thought I was ready for her to leave. The moment she drove off, like, come back. come back. I can't do this. But nevertheless, it's great, and you learn to deal with those things.
Awesome. Kind of, I'd say, bouncing off of this topic, and I think we've hit all the questions in the chat. So I think this would be our last one, and kind of a final thought I'd like to get from each of you. It was interesting to see, like, as people signed up, and only a select amount were able to join live. A lot of people signed up to get the recording afterward. But there were a wide range of ages and stages of people that signed up here, and you could see it in the chat. So, some people who have kids, and then there's also a lot of people still in here right now that don't have them. For those maybe younger members of the fraternity that are going to listen to this, what's one piece of advice that you wish you had received before becoming a father, or that you currently give to the younger brothers that are in that stage of they don't have one yet and they may be expecting, or they're just planning on it in the future?
Well, I'll start. I guess there's two things. One is, if you're considering being a dad, it's honestly the greatest thing ever. So, like, I highly recommend having kids. And I know that sounds weird to say out loud, but it is a decision for a lot of folks. And trust me, you're going to be a great dad. You're on this call, you're already thinking about it. If you're already a dad and on this call, that means you're still working at it. None of us are perfect at this thing, and so you have to continually evolve. And so if you're considering it, please, please, please make the decision to become a dad. Have lots of kids. You're never going to be able to afford them. Just have as many as you can. The people on this call are good dads already. Inevitably, we need good dads, more good dads, raising good kids. Okay. And number two is, somebody told me this a long time ago. A baby has never died from crying. Okay. So listen, it sounds weird, but they cry a lot, and you might think you're losing your mind, and you might think that, like, that world is going to end. All babies cry. Okay. So just dig in. You'll get to the other side of that thing pretty quick. So those are my two pieces of advice.
Awesome. Brandon?
For me, I think it takes work, and you're going to make mistakes, and try to be your best self that you can. But if you give that time to them, they take that all in. And it's a great, for those of you that aren't dads on the call, man, I have relived. I think I make up excuses, like I went and saw like a He-Man, He-Man. Like, my wife's like, they don't even know what He-Man is. I was like, oh, we're gonna go see it, because I play like Greco. I play with Legos. If you catch yourself, like, my kids will walk away from the Legos, and I'm still finishing the spaceship, and Jenny's like, what are you doing? They went into the playroom like 10 minutes ago. I'm like, I've got to finish the spaceship. I got to finish this. So it's a chance to, like I said earlier, I didn't have the greatest childhood growing up. So I just love being able to try to make up for that and be the best dad that I can. And that way my children are like, man, my old man was corny as heck sometimes, but he sure did love me. And so I love too how EJ told the story about me telling the story, but I can tell the story of Mike Riley telling me a story about the time that I had an S10 pickup growing up, and I think he painted one of his daughters pink, and about how they drove it around in Kansas, that little S10 pickup truck. So hopefully those of you that are on a call can see that through brotherhood and friendships in this fraternity, we share our stories about our experiences and our children. So my last point is, connect with other men that you look up to, and don't be afraid to talk about, like I was with Mike or EJ was with me, like those tough things. And most men who care, who love being dads, are definitely gonna, after we show you our wallet or our phones of all the pictures of our kids, once we get past that, we might have a few good nuggets to share. So that's my closing comment.
Thank you, Brandon. Mike or EJ?
I was just going to say that you're going to make mistakes as a father, and there's nothing wrong with owning it and apologizing to your child that you made a mistake. I think that's a valuable lesson for both of you, for you to be able to do that, and for your child to know that mistakes can be made, and how important that apology can be.
Yeah, I think that goes to kind of what I was saying earlier about modeling the behavior. And yeah, it's great to apologize, but also you don't want to, your kids will, they want you to be the, who they imagine you to be, right? And to not take advantage of that. And continue to model the behavior. Um, and yeah, just spending as much time with them as you can. You'll never regret spending time with them. Do what you have to do for that. And then just kind of more a little levity, for, I guess, Drew's expecting a daughter. Everybody talks about how you're not able to sleep, or you lose sleep. No, you get interrupted sleep. The trick is to go to bed earlier. Okay. You just go to bed earlier, and it takes a lot longer. And the number one thing there is just take care of mama. If you can't your job is to take care of mama. There's nothing you can do for that newborn. God created women for that way, because that's how we're built, and your job is to take care of mama.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank our presenters, Matt, Brandon, Mike, EJ, for everything you shared today, and giving us a little bit of insight into your life and some personal stories. I want to thank everyone who attended and showed up. If you want to get the recording after this, there will be a link posted in the Pike Network, another shameless plug for it. And we got 4 or 5 sessions we've done over the last couple months in this vein that are also in there. So check those things out. Stay connected. And thank you all for being here today.